In the deep winter silence of the mountains, Eli Turner, a forest ranger living alone in a small wooden cabin, had grown used to the quiet. But that morning, a faint scratching at the door froze him in place. When he opened it, a thin, soaked bobcat stood before him. A dying cub held gently in her jaws. Her eyes weren't wild anymore, they were pleading, desperate, asking for something no words could ever express. And from that moment, nothing in Eli's world would ever be the same. The cascades breathed in slow white ribbons, and the old fire lookout took the weather like a prayer. Eli Turner kept the stove low, the lights lower, and the door latched against a wind that tasted of ice and cedar. He moved quietly, a man trying not to disturb the thoughts that lived here before him. He'd come to the ridge to study how the forest healed after flames. But the forest had been studying him back. In his logbook, he wrote the way a medic would: signs, patterns, pulse. Lately, the pages carried another beat, small tracks stitched like ellipses across the snow. Bobcat, he thought. Not cougar, not coyote. Toes tight, stride short, dew claws hidden. The prince crossed the service road at dawn and vanished in salal, the colour of old smoke. He felt a lift in the chest he didn't expect. Respect, maybe, or permission to pay attention again. He followed only with his eyes. Eli believed the rule that kept him kind. Look long, step light, leave no debt. The cat was living whether seen, never owned. Still, when the wind eased and the firs stopped talking, he could swear something watched from the tree line, weighing him like a branch. At midday the sun sheeted through thin cloud, silvering the lake and the windows of his past. He remembered heat, the season he couldn't outrun, the ash that took the woman who loved this ridge first. Grief had left him careful with wonder. He measured it out like rations. A sound cut the quiet, a soft, percussive chirr carried from below the bluff. Not owl, not jay. He froze, then let the silence rebuild itself around the note. Another answered, faint and ragged. He pictured tufted ears, a throat working against cold, a message sent to anything listening. He set venison scraps on a flat stone far from the door. No training, just a thank you to the world for surviving its own weather. Tracks found the offering by evening. The meat went, the stone iced, and nothing else moved except a shadow that refused the shape he tried to give it. Night put its hand over the ridge. The lookout sighed and clicked, a body with old bones. Eli set a mug on the sill and watched snow find its own gravity. Somewhere in that dark, a small life threaded brush and order, proud of its silence, frightened of everything that made noise. He drifted and woke to the stove ticking down. Wind had calmed. Flakes fell like patient ash. The lake held the moon in a cracked bowl of ice. He stood in the doorway of sleep, believing for a moment he'd dreamed the call. Memory can trap a man deeper than any snare. Near midnight, the camp radio hissed and settled. In the lull, another sound, a delicate scrape at the outer landing, not bold, not begging, just present. He held his breath. The scrape came again, 2 careful touches. Then stillness so complete he could hear his own pulse answer. He did not open the door. Not yet. Trust is a trail you don't rush, and the wild hates a hurry. He set his hand flat to the wood, feeling the cold transfer through the grain. A quiet communion. On the other side, something living waited, measuring the same distance. He spoke softly to no one and to everything. "I see you," he said, which meant only that he was willing to be seen. The wind turned a page on the roof. The scrape did not return. He set another log on, and the room took the warmth like news, the kind you hold in the dark. By dawn, the steps on the landing were snow-filled, but the print beside them stayed clean. 4 pads, neat as punctuation, and smaller prints nested within, as if the sentence carried a softer word. Eli read it without touching. Somewhere, a mother had learned the door's name. Morning lifted like thin gauze. The ridge kept its hush, and Eli read the tracks again, careful as a man turning a fragile page. Fresh falls layered old prints, but the story held. A bobcat had circled wide, then doubled back, testing the door the way rivers test a bend. He brewed coffee and set a shallow pan of water on the outer landing. Not bait, not a bargain, just kindness translated into something useful. The air carried sap and iron. Far off, a raven broke a line of silence, stitching the valley with one black thread. The prince returned before noon, delicate and decisive, pressed over his boot marks as if to erase them. In the tree line, branches trembled without wind. He stood side on, eyes soft, the way you look at lightning through curtains, a shape unstitched from the brush, all caution and bone. She was small for a bobcat, light in the hips, hide pulled tight by winter and something worse. Frost filmed the whiskers. The right hind leg skated the snow, not bearing weight. When she lifted her head, the eyes were clear gold that held green the way moss holds rain. A second shadow halved itself from the salal. A cub, late season, still boxy in the head, prince toddler wide. It hesitated, then pressed against her flank, a comma looking for its sentence. Eli felt the ridge step closer, everything listening to whether this would break or hold. He didn't move. He let the door stand open to light and stayed inside its frame, palms empty. The cat measured him with the grave arithmetic the wild is born, knowing distance plus posture, cadence minus threat. The cub peeked, then disappeared into fur again, saving its courage. She eased forward 3 steps, stopped, and made a sound small as a match flare chirr, then a ragged trill that didn't quite find its pitch. The landing caught the note and gave it back. Eli felt it more than heard it. A string plucked under the ribs, vibrating with winter. He sees it then, metal bruising hair at the hock, a crescent of rust cutting through the fur's pale. Not today's wound, days old, maybe a week. She lifted the bad leg like a broken question. The cub mimicked the motion, a child echo, then settled, watching him watch her. He crouched slow and slid the water pan toward the threshold with a shove broom soft. No food, not yet. He'd learned that hunger binds quick, and he wanted something older than appetite to do the binding. The mother stayed silent, except for that thin, high wire of breath. Steam drifted from the pan. The cub stretched its face to the edge and lapped, tongue tiny, careful not to clink the tin. The mother waited, scanning, the way a burned tree still reads wind. When she bent to drink, the bad leg quivered, and pain drew a tight veil over her eyes. From the radio shelf, Eli lifted the handset and pressed, then let it go without calling. The room hummed with no. He set it down and reached instead for clean cloth, a tin of antiseptic, a strip of canvas he could cut into a wrap if the night asked for courage. Snow began again, soft enough to hear. He spoke the only truth he owned. "You made it," he said, voice low and ordinary, as if greeting a neighbor. Across the landing, the Bobcat's ears swiveled, and in that quiet, deliberate turn, Trust took one breath and did not die. Dawn sifted in on quiet feet. The cat and her cub had slept beneath the stairwell, a pocket of breath in the cold. Eli eased the door wider, letting warmth spill without crossing the line. The mother watched through a veil of whiskers, the bad leg tucked, the cub folded like a second heartbeat. He set a towel near the threshold and a shallow tray of water just beyond it, then backed away with palms open. The Bobcat shifted, reading the room, taking its measure like weather takes a ridge. The cub broke first, nosing the towel, leaving a crescent of damp where it sat. He radioed a single name, Maeve. Static gathered, then her voice, thin as fishing line. He kept it simple: injury, behavior, location. She answered with a warning he already knew. Any hands-on would cross a line. "Then teach me to help without touching," he said. "Silence then. I'm coming." While he waited, he talked like a man speaking to rain. He called the mother Old Girl and the cub Small Thunder, names made of respect, not ownership. The cat listened with her whole body, ears working, pupils steady, the wild equivalent of nodding once and remembering. A flinch rippled her flank when the wind rattled the stovepipe. She rose, set weight wrong, then righted with a hiss caught behind her teeth. Eli saw the crusted bruise where iron had kissed bone, and knew the clock was louder than the room. The cub pressed close, faithful to the ache. Maeve's SUV clawed the track by mid-morning. She stepped out carrying a soft bag and a harder face. One look at the landing undid both. "She chose the door?" she breathed. Eli nodded. They spoke low about sedation, permits, and the difference between rescue and custody. Maeve crouched inside the frame, shoulders angled to look smaller. Eyes down, then up. She laid gauze, pain gel, and a length of self-adhesive wrap within reach of the threshold tools, placed like offerings. "No bait," she said. "Water, warmth, quiet. Let her tell us what she'll allow." The mother drew forward on 3 good legs until the threshold touched her whiskers. She tested the world with scent, then with silence. Maeve murmured the way field vets do, syllables soft and round. The cub tipped a paw over the lip and paused, toes spread wide to feel the wood. A print as neat as punctuation bloomed on the floorboards. The mother followed, only the bad leg held clear. Eli cut a strip of wrap with slow hands and slid it edgewise on the towel. The Bobcat lowered, breath heavy, eyes bright pain, lit from within like a lantern. Maeve worked without touching skin. She looped the wrap beneath, using the towel as a sling, a sailor's knot remade for fur. The mother held, teeth barely parted, a low tremor stringing through muscle. The cub watched, tipped its head, and made a sound small as a prayer. When the wrap settled and the gel's wintergreen rose, the cat exhaled, a long ribbon of air letting go of its own weight. Outside, a truck engine coughed where no truck belonged, then died. Maeve's eyes slid to Eli's. "You expecting company?" His jaw answered before his voice could. In the tree line, a man's smoke lifted, thin and mean. Boot prints ringed the plough berm like quotation marks around their work. The mother bobcat turned her head, measuring the same change. She gathered the cub with a chirr that braided warning and love, and the wild hinged closed without a sound. Snowfall thinned to powder, the kind that hushes a ridge without asking. The mother bobcat lay under the stairwell, breath lifting frost off her whiskers. The cub tucked into the cradle of her ribs, a comma held safe in a sentence that would not finish. Eli and Maeve kept to the doorway, letting warmth drift. Maeve checked the wrap with her eyes, not her hands. The gel's wintergreen hung faint and clean, a promise more than a cure. 3 weeks if we're lucky, she whispered. The mother blinked once, the slow agreement of a creature that had outlived storms, traps, and guesses. They built a ritual that belonged to no clock. Water first, then quiet, then meat shaved fine and set on the stone lip outside the threshold. No one looked at the food while the cats considered it. Hunger is loud. They wanted trust to be the first voice the room heard. The cub learned the line of light across the floorboards and tested it with a forepaw, toes splayed, pads black as ink. Every inch was a negotiation. The mother listened for engines that weren't wind, for the weight of a boot on crusted snow. Her ears wrote the ledger of risk. From the tree line, camera glass flashed and went dark. Boone's smoke drew a thin spear into the stillness. The kind of line a man makes when he thinks he owns the page. Eli felt the stare before he found it. Maeve's mouth tightened. The bobcat's gaze moved past both men. Eli set his slow heartbeat on the table with the field journal. Dates, temperatures, the pain's small victories. He added photographs of the rat and the bruise in careful light. "If they come," Maeve said, "we show the work, not the sentiment." The mother closed her eyes and breathed. Midday warmed enough to soften the wrap's edge. The mother tested weight, a tremor climbing the leg like a wire in wind. She held, then let it go. Pain flared, bright and pure. She swallowed it the way mountains swallow thunder without boast, without letting it echo too long. The cub tumbled into boldness and backed out, a tide in small fur. It found the water pan and drank with the seriousness of a creature that knew the price of thirst. When it looked up, a drop clung to the whisker's tip, a single star. Maeve smiled with the part of her that remained tender. Boone coughed laughter from the trees and rattled his keys. The mother rose so lightly the snow forgot she'd been there. She chirred once, a plucked string braided from warning and comfort, then gathered the cub between her forelegs. Inside the lookout, every nail remembered heat. Silence returned like a deer that trusts a salt lick. Eli eased the door just wider and stepped back further. He set a scrap of flannel near the hinge, a soft square where a paw could rest and not slide. The mother read the offering with scent, then with stillness, then let it be. As afternoon thinned, cloud opened a seam and sent down one ribbon of sun. It found the bobcat's eyes and wrote a gold line through green. She lowered her head onto folded paws. The bad leg nested, the cub breathing against her chest. The ridge listened to two hearts ticking. Night came without edges. Somewhere, a truck left in anger and shrank into trees. Maeve packed her kit and touched Eli's shoulder once. A pact signed in quiet. On the landing, the mother did not move. Snow sifted over her prints, but the shape remained. Trust, for one more day, held. Snow fell straight and thin, like threads stitching the ridge back together. The mother bobcat lay beneath the stairwell, the bad leg wrapped and quiet. The cub drowsed against her ribs, whiskers twitching with small dreams. Eli warmed the stove just enough to let breath unshiver. He cleared the landing, no bait, no bowls, only the soft square of flannel near the hinge. Trust had its own grammar now. He tried to write inside it. From the trees came a faint chitter, not the cub's voice, not quite the mother's either. The sound missed the note, then tried again. Maeve parked below the bend, walking in with her hands visible. She checked the wrap by eye and listened to the cat's breath the way nurses listen to waves in a shell. Stable, she murmured, then frowned at the tree line. Hear that? The ridge held its breath, as if to answer. The mother rose, ears high, chin lifted toward the dark fur. She churred low, a braid of welcome and warning, and the cub pressed close. Then the brush parted, and a second small body wobbled free, thinner, duller, winter clawing at the ribs from the inside. It braced, then sagged. Eli felt the air tilt. The newcomer's eyes were wide and glass bright, breath hitching in the top of its chest. Frost salted its muzzle like early grey. The mother stepped aside one pace, not more opening a lane toward the door. The wild had made a decision and signed it with silence. He stayed within the frame, knees soft, palms empty. Maeve set a towel halfway to them, and nothing else. Let them choose, she whispered. The sick cub tried to stand proud and failed, leaving a delicate skid of claws on the plank. The mother did not look away, neither did Eli. Pain taught the little one to be slow, but the cold taught it to hurry. It took the towel like a shore and rested its head on a fold where heat had lived. The mother gave a cry too thin for anger and too steady for panic, a held note that felt older than names. The ridge answered with hush. Mid-chapter peak landed soft and heavy. The mother touched the cub forward with her nose, then stepped back. No surrender, only trust. Maeve breathed once and moved as if the room were made of glass. She slid the towel closer by inches, lining it up with the warmth bleeding from indoors. Steam rose from the cub's coat when the door's heat found it. Maeve's voice ran like water over rock, narrow, calm, persistent. She didn't touch skin. Eli cut another strip of flannel and laid it beside the first, a second island the cub could reach without learning human weight. A cough shook the tiny chest, dry as pine bark. Maeve's eyes flicked to Eli. Infection, maybe worse. We can't fix the wild, she said, but we can fight the cold. He nodded and fed the stove. The mother watched the flame ride glass, eyes gold green, measuring what fire could and couldn't do. Snow deepened the quiet. Boone's truck did not return. The first cub curled against its mother. Small thunder gone to sleep. The sick one's breath settled into a sawtooth rhythm and held there, teeth on the edge, but not yet through. The mother lowered to guard both and blinked slow. When night gathered, Eli closed the door to a hand's width and sat within sight. Logbook open to a blank page. He didn't write, he listened. Outside, the mother bobcat lifted her head and, once, barely, purred a broken engine catching. It wasn't joy. It was courage finding idle. Morning thinned the storm to lace. The mother bobcat still held the landing like a prayer. Bad leg nested, the first cub tucked warm. The sick one lay on the towel islands, steam ghosting from its coat. Eli kept the stove steady, the door at a hand's width, and the room's breath soft. Maeve listened without touching. The tiny chest soared shallow, then settled, then stuttered again. She wet a cloth, wrung it warm, and slid it edgewise so heat could rise without human scent. The mother tracked every inch, eyes bright as struck coin, body coiled but holding. The ridge went quiet in the way good churches do. A jay dared one note and took it back. Eli read the logbook margins, as if answers hid between lines. He marked nothing, just time, the kind that gathers around a small life and refuses to blink first. The sick cub lifted once, a brave tilt of chin, and tried a sound that never found itself. The mother leaned in, whiskers touching, and the cub's breath steadied under that wild metronome. Maeve let out a breath she didn't remember holding. Eli looked away, and then back. Mid-morning brought a warmth that didn't belong to weather. The cub's ribs learned a slower count. It licked the towel's seam, missing by a little, then found it. The mother gave a thread-thin chirr, a sound braided from promise and warning. The first cub blinked, then dozed. By noon the edge returned. Shivers racked the narrow frame, running like wind through dry grass. Maeve murmured, a river of stone's voice meant to smooth rough water. Eli fed the stove and kept the door still. The mother's ears wrote the room, catching change the eye couldn't. Then the peak arrived without thunder. The cub arched, a small bough strung too tight, and went slack, as if sleep had simply decided to stay. Silence leaned hard on the landing. The mother pressed her nose along the ribs, from shoulder to flank, reading what breath no longer wrote. She did not cry out. She closed her eyes and put her head beside the tiny muzzle, breath warming what warmth had left. The first cub crept close and froze, learning a shape it would not understand for another winter. Maeve's hand hovered in air and did not cross. Eli folded the spare flannel like a cradle and waited. The mother lifted her head and watched him, pupils changing slow as tide. He slid the cloth nearer by inches, letting her choose the distance. She touched it once with her whiskers and stepped away one careful pace. They wrapped the small body in quiet that could be folded. No knot, no string, just a bend and a tuck. Eli set the bundle on the landing boards, not inside, not out, and moved back. The mother rose and picked it up with the care of a word spoken only once. Snow began again, forgiving the prince as it fell. She walked to the stair's shadow, set the bundle down, and looked at Eli a long time. In that look were the ridgelines, the traps, the nights, and the door's name. Then she lifted her surviving cub and turned to the trees. Evening found the landing empty, but for 2 clean ovals where heads had rested. Maeve closed her bag with a sound too loud for the room. Eli wrote at last, weather, hour, and 1 line he never planned to pen. She trusted us to witness. The stove ticked and held the heat. The night gave them back their breath. The wind rose and smoothed it flat again. Before sleep, Eli opened the door a palm wider and set the towel where light pooled. On the step, the snow kept its counsel. Somewhere beyond the firs, a mother carried loss, the only way the wild come forward. Morning arrived without edges, a pale wash over the ridge. The landing lay clean, 2 ovals in the snow softly filling. Eli read the quiet as a ledger. The mother had carried loss forward, taking her surviving cub into timber. Somewhere beyond the firs, pads pressed a new sentence. He moved slow along the service road, counting old sign, clipped grass, hair caught on wire, the faint iron breath of a trap long buried. The forest held its tongue. A jay stitched a single blue note and quit. Far down slope, a raven turned like a hinge on the cold. Maeve's warning rode his pocket, small as a folded map. Document, don't disturb. He should have waited for a badge and a clipboard. Instead, he followed a thread of stink-rotted meat, cheap dog food, anise bait, as lazy as it was cruel. The wind recoiled and came back thin. At the elder-break, he found it, a snare half-snowed, brass bright, where struggle had polished it. Nearby, boot prints bracketed the ground, like quotation marks, big, square, impatient. A camera on a T-post watched the clearing's throat. The lens had the boredom of a bully. He photographed angles, dates, the lay of brush. Under a cedar he knelt, gloved hands sifting for casings, finding instead a tuft of pale fur with the faintest blood salt. Not fresh, but not old. He labelled a bag and felt the ridge tip toward a heat that wasn't weather. A twig popped left of the blind, too heavy for squirrel, too light for bear. He stood still and let breath fall quiet in his throat. Through Salal, 2 amber coins hovered, set in whisker and will. The mother watched, high on 3 good legs, the cub a shadow behind her hip. She churred once, no plea in it, only a thread pulled tight between danger and duty. Then her gaze cut beyond him, toward the bait pile, toward the blind's black mouth. Eli understood. The door had been a refuge. This place was a theft. He lowered the camera and listened. Boone came in loud, as if to prove the forest small. Diesel coughed, door slammed, metal laughed against itself. He shouldered through the brush with a smugness that wore like cologne. The mother flattened, not from fear but from geometry, becoming a fraction of herself. "Look what wandered into my lease," Boone said, smile all blade. He saw Eli's phone, the numbered flags, the careful bags. You trespass, you rescue, you preach, I harvest. His boot heel ground the snow, as if to make a point the land would remember longer than he would. Eli kept his hands where weather could read them. "You've set on protected ground," he said, voice low. Boone stepped closer, finger to lens, knocking the camera's eye aside. The blind behind him breathed dark. In that pause, the cub squeaked a pinhead of sound, bright and raw. Mid-chapter peak cracked like ice. Boone spun, saw the eyes, and raised the rifle into a space that had never been his. The mother rose from absence, larger than her hunger, and stepped past Eli into clean view. She did not flee. She stared down the barrel and did not blink. The ridge held Boone's breath for him. He let it go with a curse, lowering the gun because something older than law told him this was a line he could not sell. "You get one day," he hissed, backing towards steel and noise. Branches closed behind him like a door remembering its job. Silence didn't trust the quiet at first, then settled, feather by feather. The mother watched the track until the smell thinned, then looked to Eli and away, as if to say the rest wasn't his. She gathered the cub with a dry grass chur and ghosted into fur, light as unfallen snow. He marked coordinates, flagged the snare, and took the camera's card. Above the alder, cloud broke a seam and slid one pale coin of sun across the clearing. For a breath, the tracks of 2 cats and 1 man shone like stitching. Then wind smudged them to secrecy again. On the way home, he saw their sign, twice pads weaving alder roots, a tails brush writing the margin of a log. No invitation, no goodbye, only proof that wild hearts still chose their roots. He pocketed the proof he'd gathered and walked lighter than the work should allow. Back at the lookout, he set evidence in order, every bag and photo a thin guardrail against the dark. Maeve's voice on the radio grew steadier with each detail. Outside, dusk sorted spruce from fir. Somewhere beyond the last tree, a mother bobcat taught her cub a new path. Night rose calm as lake steam. Eli cracked the door, left the towel square where light pooled, then let the latch kiss shut. The ridge exhaled. In the hush, he heard nothing. No engine, no metal, only the clean arithmetic of cold. The wild was moving, and for now, it was enough. Dawn arrived with a clean edge, the ridge rinsed of last night's noise. Eli checked the flags he'd planted, each bright mark a thin promise that law might outlast swagger. In the powder between alders, new prints stitched across his own bobcat and cub, angled wide, moving wary but unafraid. Maeve's message clicked through. Wardens delayed by weather, hold fast and document. He packed a thermos, spare batteries, and a length of cord to tie evidence tags. The forest tasted of iron and fir sap. Somewhere a raven practiced the same old sermon and flew on. He set a camera facing the bait pile, then another at the blind's dark mouth. The mother's prints looped the clearing at distance, mapping hazard like a teacher's chalk. The cub's tracks mirrored her cautions, clumsy in places, bold in small stabs of faith. Wind combed the grass and brought a smell wrong for morning hot diesel, cold arrogance. Boone's truck idled low, then cut, leaving a quiet shaped like a grin. Eli sank into a stand of salal, breath shortened to fit the space. He saw boot leather. He tasted old metal. Boone walked the site with the pride of a thief counting rooms he didn't own. He knelt at the snare, reset tension, and checked the camera he thought was his only witness. "Lease is a lease," he muttered, as if the land could hear him, and shrug. Eli rose to shoot distance shots, angles, flags, the bait's obscene shine. Boone spotted the lens flare and turned fast, rifle lifted into that shared air. "Document this," he said. And the barrel's black ring found a place between pulses where a man keeps his name. The forest drew in a breath that wouldn't come back the same. Eli kept both hands high, palms empty, voice low enough not to shatter the scene. "Protected ground," he said. "Leave." Boone's smile thinned. "You first." The rifle climbed a notch higher and steadied. Mid-chapter broke clean. From the brush, the mother bobcat came on 3 good legs, larger than fear, bright as consequence. She stepped between the men, head low, eyes level, body writing a single sentence. "This is mine to warn, and yours to understand." Boone flinched, then overcorrected, sighting down into wild that didn't blink. The cub ghosted left, small shadow cut from her light. The mother churred a string pulled tight across winter, and in the space it made, Eli moved an inch, just enough to tilt the aim off heart. The rifle cracked anyway, percussive and stupid. Bark spat from a cedar behind Eli, wood dust in his teeth. The mother surged, not to bite, but to occupy the kind of courage that fills a barrel with truth. Boone stumbled, swore, and the gun's second breath died in his hands. He backed away, boots slipping, bravado gone to steam. "It's a cat," he said, as if language could make it small. The mother held him in a stare older than badge or deed, then turned, collecting the cub with a sound woven from warning, and "leave us." The forest finished the sentence. Silence poured back in, slow and clean. Eli lowered his hands, lungs catching up. He photographed the misplaced bullet scar, the reset snare, Boone's fresh prints unraveling down slope. In the snow, the bobcat's track crossed his own, like a signature you earn, not write. He called Maeve with a voice 2 shades hoarse and steadier than it felt. "Escalation," he said. "No blood." She exhaled the relief she'd been holding since winter began. "Hold the sight. I'm coming." The ridge listened and agreed to keep its weather for 1 more hour. On the walk out, he found a tuft of fur snagged on alder fresh, unbled, bobcat soft. He pressed it into a sample bag, like a prayer folded small enough to pocket. Above him, clouds split and slid a pale coin of sun across the bait pile. An unwanted altar briefly lit. Back at the lookout, he laid the evidence in tidy rows. Photos, casings, the map with a pencil road of prints. He set water on the landing and no food, the grammar intact. By dusk a single track appeared, paused and turned. Choice, not fear, had made the turn. Night came gently, a hand on the shoulder instead of a shove. The stove ticked like a good clock. Beyond the tree line, a mother taught her cub a new geometry, how to fill a space without leaving a mark. Eli listened to the quiet soul for safety and found his breath again. He slept in his chair, boots on, radio near. Far off, a diesel coughed and thought better of it. Closer in, snow reset the day's arithmetic. The last thing he heard was a small sound At the hinge, no beg, no bargain, only presence. The door remembered its name and kept it. Morning came with a gentler hand. The ridge wore new snow like a bandage laid smooth, and the landing held only light. Eli set the evidence in rows, photos, coordinates, a brass snare tag in a zip bag, then opened the door to air and silence. Far off, small tracks braided aldershade and vanished. Maeve climbed the track with a thermos and a face that had learned patience. She read the table the way doctors read a chart, then the woods the way field hands read weather. "Hold steady," she said. "We let truth do the lifting." The stove ticked, measuring a slower kind of time. By noon, a county SUV eased in, tires whispering over crust. Sheriff Dalton Reed stepped out with Ranger Cole Avery, both men quiet in the way of people who have listened to bad stories before. They took statements without hurry, eyes pausing on the careful bags, the numbered flags. "Did you harbor?" Reed asked, not unkind. Eli kept his breath even. "I sheltered a landing and a door," he said. "The wild chose the rest." Maeve laid out the log, dates, wraps, the no-bait rule written in ordinary ink. Avery nodded once, a field man recognizing field work. Outside, wind combed the fur and returned with news. Fresh bobcat pads circled wide, cutting their scent like a seamstress trims thread. The mother did not step closer. She balanced distance like a coin on her tongue, reading every shoulder angle, every pitch of voice that carried. Reed finished photographs at the bait pile and blind, then paused at the porch. On the top step lay a shape that did not belong to cold rattles muted by snow, head crushed clean. A timber rattler, heavy, recent. Eli felt the air tilt. Maeve's eyes found the tree line and held. The mother stood where Alder turns to shadow, 3 good legs set, the bad tucked without apology. She watched Eli see the gift and did not blink. A thin cheer braided the quiet, neither plea nor command, just the math of a debt balanced in the only language she owned. Mid-chapter peaked without shouting. Eli knelt, not touching the snake, and bowed his head once. A nod returned across species. For a heartbeat, the cub stepped beside her, shoulders squared like a brave idea. The mother lowered her own head in answer, then let the forest close. The warden said little more. File the snare, pull the cards, press a warrant, Reed told Avery. To Eli, document and distance. You've drawn a line and kept it. Paperwork clicked shut like a holster. Law turned on its heel and went to find the man who sold harm as work. By dusk, word climbed the band. Boone stopped at a gas station. Tags matched, rifle seized. Not the end of men like him, but the end of his weather here. Eli set water on the landing, and nothing else. The grammar held. Choice, not hunger, would author any next page. Night sifted in. He scrubbed a pinhead fleck of snake blood from the board, then left a square of flannel where light pooled, the door open to the width of trust. In the trees, the cub practiced silence, failing adorably once, then nailing it apprentice to a mother's older math. Days thinned the visits to a rumour and a joy. Sometimes only whisker prints on rhyme said they'd been. Sometimes a single pad print pressed like a signature and gone. Each absence felt less like loss, more like respect returning to its proper distance and resting there. When the thaw began to taste like iron and rain, Eli logged it all. The officers, the warrant, the snake. He wrote one extra line. She does not owe me. Beyond the tree line, a bobcat taught a cub how to carry winter into spring, without dropping what mattered on the way. Spring unzipped winter with a careful hand. Meltwater stitched the service road, and the lookout breathed in boards that had been holding their breath since frost. Eli left the door on its easy latch, the tower square where light pooled, the landing swept of everything but weather and welcome. The ridge spoke in drips and soft landslides. Alder budded a tender green, and the lake lost its armor one pane at a time. He logged creek rise and wind shifts, then paused over a blank line that asked nothing. Across the yard, old prints had become rumors, and rumors, patience. Some mornings he found only whisker arcs in rhyme, a geometry the sun erased by 9. Other days, a single pad print nested a fern frond, fresh as a thought. The mother bobcat kept her distance, teaching a young body to own it. Absence was not refusal. It was skill passed on. He saw them once at mid-slope, the mother high on 3 good legs, the cub longer now, shoulders strong under a new coat. They ghosted the edge of a melt line, drinking with heads up, ears working the way antennae learn a language. He did not call. He took the gift and let go. Thaw turned to rain that smelled like iron and moss. Eli oiled hinges, mended a split rail, and kept the grammar of the door intact. Water, light, no bait. Choice had built the bridge. Appetite would only cheapen it. In quiet hours, the ridge returned his voice to its proper size. Then one dawn arrived, sharpened by birds. On the top step lay something that couldn't have been wind. A scrap of flannel, weathered blue, clean at the tear. He knew the cloth by memory, not sight, the twin of what had once warmed a small body too briefly. The room forgot its air. Mid-chapter rose without thunder. At the tree line, a young bobcat stood like certainty, grown into its longitude, eyes lit with the same gold-green algebra. It watched him find the scrap and did not move. Behind it, the mother waited in alder shadow, a quiet axis the world turned on. Eli knelt, not reaching out, only lowering the whole of himself to the step. "I see it," he said, a sentence that meant thank you, and I remember, and you owe me nothing. Rain stitched between them. The young cat blinked once, slow as a gate closing gently behind a guest. The mother gave a chirr braided from directive and blessing. The young one stepped backward, not turning, then ghosted sideways into brush the color of old smoke. For a heartbeat, the mother held the clearing with a look that carried winter and flame and a door's true name. They went the way wild things go, not gone, just elsewhere, as if the forest had tightened its coat and tucked them back into the lining. Eli sat with the step, the cloth, the soft ache that felt like being paid in a currency older than law. The stove clicked its steady amen. When the sun broke, it wrote a bright bar across the landing. He set the flannel inside, not shrine but keeping, and left the door to its quiet work. On the road below, alder shed rain like laughter. Somewhere, A mother and almost grown child practiced vanishing without erasing. By evening, the ridge had settled into its wide, forgiving breath. Eli closed the journal on a final line. The wild returns what it chooses, and sometimes it is enough to be present when it does. Outside, small pads stitched fresh grammar into damp soil, and the door remembered them. If this story touched your heart, just drop a 1 in the comments, or a 0 if it stayed quiet inside you. Don't forget to subscribe. There are more gentle stories waiting just beyond the trees.